Your meeting is now live.
Thanks, Jane. And I now need to go back to the script, which is somewhere else. Here we are. So, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Gerald Jackson, Leader of the Council, and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Cabinet of Portsmouth City Council. Members of the public are invited to view this meeting, and there's been the opportunity for written representations to be submitted. We are mainly meeting virtually in response to limitations placed on governance by the COVID-19 pandemic. For the purposes of this meeting, the City Solicitor has advised that pursuant to Section 78 of the Coronavirus Act 2020, this meeting will be run in reference to the model standing orders as set out in the Local Government Authorities Coronavirus Flexibility of Local Authority Meetings Regulations 2020 number 392. Colleagues, if you could keep your cameras on, but mics off, unless it's your turn to speak. And I'm now going to ask colleagues to introduce themselves, starting with members of the Cabinet. Okay, so first off, Steve Pitt.
Good afternoon, Councillor Steve Pitt, Deputy Leader of the Council, Cabinet Member for Culture, Leisure and Economic Development.
Darren.
Thank you, Gerald. I'm Darren Sanders. I'm the Cabinet Member for Housing and Preventing Homelessness.
Okay, who else can I see here? Lynn?
Lynn Starr, Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation.
Great, thank you. Susie?
Susie Horton, Cabinet Member for Children, Families and Education.
Matt?
Matthew Winnington, Cabinet Member for Health, Wellbeing and Social Care.
Hugh?
Hugh Mason, Cabinet Member for Planning Policy.
Folks, that's all the councillors on Cabinet that I can see. I know we got an apology from Lee Hunt. Is there anybody else loitering who I didn't call?
I understand that Councillor Dave Ashmore has got problems with internet, so is trying to sort that out.
Okay, all right. We've also got, I think, other councillors. I think we've got Claire Udi with us as well. Is that right, Claire?
Hello, how are you?
Very well. Lovely to see you.
Nice to see you too, Gerald.
Okay, look, should we go round and introduce all the officers as well? David Williams.
Good afternoon, all. David Williams, Chief Executive.
Okay, Chris Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Chris Ward, Director of Finance.
James.
Afternoon, James Hill, Director of Housing, Neighbourhood and Building Services.
Tristan.
Afternoon, Tristan Samuels, Director of Regeneration.
Okay, I'm not sure we've got any other directors here, is that right, or have I missed? Oh, Mike.
You've got me.
Yes, Mike. Hello, hello.
Hi, I'm Mike Sellers. I'm the Port Director for Portsmouth International Port.
And a beautiful picture it is too. Okay, other officer colleagues who are also on the call. Claire Looney.
Hello, Claire Looney, Partnership and Commissioning Manager for Culture, Leisure and Regulatory Services.
And Claire, are you here for NTR?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Colette.
Hi, I'm Colette Hill. I'm the Assistant Director for Neighbourhoods.
Okay. Jane.
Hello, I'm Jane Dodino, Local Democracy Officer.
Peter Balfe.
Good afternoon, Joe. Peter Balfe, City Solicitor. I'm just doing a bit of theatre and possibly ravelling, so I'm just lurking.
Okay, thanks, Peter. I've got Catherine Ramsey.
Afternoon, Catherine Ramsey, Business Development Manager for Culture, Leisure and Regulatory Services.
Lovely. And Anna Martin.
Yeah, and Anna Martin, Democratic Services.
Okay, Tom.
Thank you, Leader. Tom Southall, Assistant Director for Property and Investment.
And then, unfortunately, my list disappears. It just says +3. So I'm not sure. Mr. Ashmore, Mr. Ashmore, you're here. Is that right?
I'm here, but my internet connection is unstable, so apologies if I keep disappearing.
Okay.
Hopefully, it won't be a problem.
Very rural frat, and I know had big problems like that. I think we got
kids are home learning and stuff. Everyone's using it, and it's all going down at very inappropriate times.
And I think we got Anne Cairns. Anne, are you with us? No, okay.
Apologies, I was on mute. Yes, I'm here.
That's all right, don't worry at all.
Yeah, Anne Keynes, Head of Acquisitions and Disposals. There's any inquiries.
Great. And I think we're joined by John Royal from the NFU. Is that right, John?
Yeah, good afternoon. Yes, John Royal. I'm the Chief Livestock Advisor for the National Farmers Union, representing England and Wales. Just here if you need me for this one agenda item. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Are you sure, John, you don't want to come and talk about buying a theatre or anything else like that?
That's not my area of expertise at all. Thanks very much.
Well, welcome. It's nice to see you as well.
Thank you very much.
Colleagues, let's just quickly run through declarations of interest. Colleagues, any interest anybody needs to declare? No. Okay. Apologies for absence. We have Lee Hunt.
Yes, declaration. Just to know whether I have an interest. We're dealing with the new Theatre Royal. I am a director of the rival theatre, as it were, the King's Theatre in Southsea. Does this count as an interest?
And Hugh, my memory is that you're a council appointed one. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Peter, can you give advice?
I'd probably say you're okay on the basis you've disclosed it today. It's suitably personal to you, but not prejudicial in the sense that you're making a fairly anodyne decision today.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Okay. Records of previous meetings held on the 1st of December, 17th of December, and 5th of January. Colleagues, are you happy with these previous minutes of those meetings?
Yes.
Lovely. Okay. Because we've got John here, who's from the NFU, can I suggest we look at the issue of the port first, so that John doesn't have to stay around for the whole time. So that's item 9, which for those people who are coping on paper is starting on page 187. So Mike, do you want to jump in and walk us through this?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Thank you, members. I'll start, and maybe David and Chris would want to chip in on some of these bits when I finish. But this is really just a highlight to the members of the current situation and the challenges that we're facing with regarding to the funding shortfall for the port infrastructure. And this is around infrastructure that's needed following the UK leaving the European Union and the border controls that need to be in place at Portsmouth International Port. We are working under something called a border operating model, which was announced by the government in July 2020. At the moment, from January this year, there's been a lot of focus around exports and the checks that have been happening over in the member states. Those physical checks will not start to happen in the UK until July 2021, the 1st of July 2021. So that was intended to give ports time to put infrastructure in place by that time. We put forward a funding bid of 32 million, and that included 2 border control posts. Now, border control posts are to carry out statutory inspections for the import of anything from meat products, fresh produce, through to live animals. And that's not live animals for slaughter. We get live animals through the port, such as racehorses, and also we get cattle breeding stock that comes through the ports as well. So we had to build 2 border control posts. The first one, which is called a POAO, which is products of animal origin, border control post is estimated to cost around 19 million, plus a land acquisition that was part of the investment that was needed to facilitate the footprint for the border control post. Then on top of that, there is a border control post for the live animals, which was estimated to cost 7 million. So that they were the biggest parts of the infrastructure. There was various other sub-projects that are listed within the paper. We were advised by the government that our funding bid was compliant and all of our sub-projects were relevant to the changes with regards to European trade. But our funding was cut. Our contingency, which was carried out under the government's Green Book, 40% contingency, was all about the need to potentially accelerate these projects because it's a very, very tight timeline to build this by the 1st of July 2021. Projects of this scale would be a minimum of 18 months. So we always knew that there would be a need to accelerate these projects. The consultants the government used to carry out what they called a deep dive reduced our contingency down from 40% to 10%. And then with all the ports that put in for the bid was oversubscribed by a third. So the government gave all the ports a haircut of a third, and we were reduced by a third after our contingency was reduced. We were successful for 17.1 million, which, as you can see, is not enough to build even the main border control post. The main border control post is essential to our trade. 50% of our imports are meat, food products, fresh produce. If we don't have this border control post, we don't have this designation, these goods can't come through the ports. Slightly ironically, the Department for Transport are funding critical freight routes to ensure resilience of supply into the UK, and some of those routes come through Portsmouth. But we would not be able to take a lot of those critical freight routes, those products, unless we had the border control posts in place. You can see from the report that what this means for Portsmouth is that just for the main border control posts and the IT integration, the land acquisition, we're around about 5.3 million short. We will not continue to build the live animal border control post, which was forecast to cost 7 million without funding. And we're also not able to extend our freight gates. And that was really to streamline the arrival of freight. So everything that's happening now with regards to operation transmission and the triage checks to ensure border compliance before the freight arrives. Part of our plan was to extend our freight gates to reduce the potential impact on the M275, but without the funding, we're not able to build that. We are pushing back to government with regards to the grant fund agreement. We haven't had a response yet, but our response to the grant fund agreement is that either the government takes the risk of contingency because they reduced our contingency. We have to reduce our project scope, obviously, because of the funding, and we get the approval to reduce our funding scope. And also to give us more time. And this is not just for Portsmouth, this is all ports. It's highly unlikely that ports will not be ready with infrastructure by the 1st of July. The only one other thing I just wanted to mention was there are also inland facilities that are being built by the government that are fully funded. We were going to be one of those inland facilities. That was the initial discussions with the government, but the only place that they found that they said was suitable was in Southampton. And we actually got the officers the various government departments to come to the port to look at what we had, and that's when we started to progress towards a potential on-port solution. I'll stop at that point. I don't know whether David or Chris wanted to add anything.
Well, I think the next person I'd like to bring in would be John. Speaking on behalf of farmers, what's your view? What else you can add before we come to make a decision?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, you explained everything really, really well there. Yeah, so yes, Brexit means that effectively our exports at the moment is stopped completely. So I guess our interest initially started that we wanted from the 1st of January to get live breeding animals out to the EU, and that trade is still fairly substantial. So we're talking anywhere between 500 and 600 consignments of high value breeding sheep, cattle, pigs and goats that go from the UK to the continent each year. And we also wanted a route that could supply both outwards and inwards. Hence we started to look at the route between Portsmouth and the ports of Normandy as a potential option for us. Traditionally, exports and imports would have used the short strait, so Dover, Calais on the normal ro-ro boats. We're aware, having written to all the EU ports, that Calais wasn't interested in establishing a BCP for live animals apart from live chicks and horses, which meant that we sort of cast our net that little bit wider, and we entered into discussions with obviously Portsmouth and a few carriers. So representing the livestock industry in the UK, we need something to be able to facilitate that high value trade, both inwards and outwards. So yes, we're looking at, I guess, as many options as we can, but we'd hope that Portsmouth, because it was well served, could supply that service for us. So yeah, at the moment that we have no options to export, and from the 1st of July we'll have no options to import any animals. I am aware already 8,000 high value Dutch dairy animals wanting to enter the country. So we know there's a backlog of animals wanting to come in. That's around driver certification at the moment, but if those things are delayed much longer, we're going to see a bit of a backlog in terms of breeding animals from Europe wanting to come into the country. Thank you.
Okay, John, just so I'm clear, that at the moment, if Calais are not wanting to have the trade come through on the Dover Strait to Calais, that means no exports will be available, or export routes will be available for British farmers. Is that right? If we're not going to build this?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote on behalf of the industry to a number of EU ports, Calais being one of them, and also Dunkirk. Obviously, it was both served by Dover. Yes, Calais came back to us to say, look, you know, we've got enough on our plate, effectively, dealing with products of animal origin, and they both struggled for both space and the ability to invest in that BCP for live animals. So they just said, look, we're going to focus on horses and live poultry. So they've ruled themselves out of the game for now.
Okay.
We are aware that the government may be investing in a facility called White Cliffs, an inland facility. Some talk that it might be ready, but you know, as far as we're aware, that they're still going through public consultation and planning. So again, there is no confirmation at all at the moment that we've got anything for animals to come into GB from Europe.
Thanks, John. Darren Sanders, you wanted to come in, Darren.
Thanks, Gerald. Just a question for John and Mike, really. The government's argument is that there are actually alternatives to Portsmouth for this trade. That's the argument that I've seen. Mike and John, is that right?
As far as I know, I mean, we've been speaking to all the ports. There is no alternative at the moment. So there is no UK port that has a border control post for live animals. That seaport, that is. So there is some indication that the White Cliffs development will include a BCP for live animals. There's nothing been built yet. So we're not aware that, well, there are some outlying plans, put it like that, but whether it actually transpires to anything, we still don't know at the moment. So at the moment, there isn't one.
Okay, and in your view, John, nothing is going to be ready for July 1, which seems to be the crunch point. Have I got that right?
No.
Okay.
I mean, your only option is to fly something in Stansted or Heathrow, but that's not practical.
I understand that, John. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gerald.
Dr. Hugh Mason.
Yes, if things are not ready by July the 1st, do we have any indication of what the government intend to do? Will they give an extension, or will the whole thing just collapse?
Or will they run around like a group of headless chickens?
Well, they'll always do that.
That is a very good question, Councillor. The ports industry that represents us and all the ports have written to the ministers of the cabinet, highlighting the fact that ports are not going to be ready by the 1st of July. I think, as John said, my understanding for the inland facilities that are fully funded, it's also unlikely they're going to be ready for the 1st of July as well. So the only thing that that's been fed back to us is that there will be a go or no go decision around that 1st of July deadline. That was initially going to be in May, but they're bringing that decision forward. We have asked for more time for this, but as it stands, and only today I've had the answers to a lot of the questions that ports have put forward for the Port Infrastructure Fund, and they are still saying and insisting that these facilities need to be built by the 1st of July. For us, if the inland facilities are built by the 1st of July and we're not, we have asked the government to give us a period of transition where goods can still come through the port, because if we don't get designated a BCP by the 1st of July and there are other facilities, there is the potential that a good 50% of our imports will not be able to come through Portsmouth until the infrastructure is built.
And they gave approval for the design on the 15th of January for a £20 million building.
Yeah, and that is a very good point, Leader. The delays that have been so far with regards to the infrastructure have actually been at the hands of some of the government departments, the Animal Plant Health Authority and DEFRA, in terms of approving the designs of the buildings. The decision on the Port Infrastructure Fund was 3 weeks later than the deadline that they gave us. So, we are already, from our contract, our principal contractor, we're already highlighting the fact that we're not going to be ready until end of August, early September. Not without the need to accelerate the projects.
Okay, Lynn Stagg.
Are our two local MPs putting pressure on the government to support us?
Yes, they both worked. Inevitably, it's easier for Penny to work than for Stephen because she's in the cabinet. But for all their hard work, nothing has changed since the initial announcement. We've made no progress, even though they pointed out to people in government, and everybody in government seems to recognise it. Yeah, think this is wrong. We've not been able to get any movement in terms of finances at all. Is that a fair assumption, Mike?
Yeah, yes, it is, and within the government departments that have been dealing with us specifically, because we were highlighted as a potential high impact port as a result of Brexit. So we've had our direct engagement with the Cabinet Office and with the various civil servants. There is the sympathy there in terms of the situation that we have, and the fact that that there's a recognition that we are a strategically important port, resilience port for some of the challenges that are going to happen within the short straits, and also the fact that we're a local authority, which is unusual to the other ports and the bids. We're a local authority port, so the council have got challenges with regards to the COVID black hole. So there is that sympathy, but as Gerald said, so far we haven't had any further funding approved.
Okay, Colleagues, thanks very much for that. I think the decision that we need to make today is whether we do go ahead and build the animal BCP, and as far as I can see, there is absolutely no way we could afford it. The amount of trade is limited. We do, I think, £23,000 worth of trade a year, Mike, in terms of these live animals, and to expect any organisation, be a council or a private company, to build a £7 million facility to facilitate a trade which to us is worth only £23,000, no company would ever do that. If the government wants this trade to continue, they need to be able to fund this, and at the moment they're not. Therefore, my recommendation is that we say that we will not be pursuing the building of an animal BCP, as we just cannot afford to do so. Colleagues, are you happy? David, Mr. Williams.
Yeah, I fully understand that. I mean, clearly this is significant in terms of the robustness of the, the sort of resilience of the ports nationally, and also significant to the national economy. I can appreciate that we can't afford to build the facility, but can I assume that the Cabinet would wish us to continue to press central government to get their act together to make sure that the funding is in place? My hunch is that this is a number of different government departments, all with some finger in the pie, but unable to resolve the issues across themselves. Thank you.
Yeah, David, I'm sure absolutely everybody would want us to continue to lobby. We're all keen to make sure that British farming is a success, and that we do our part to that, but this needs to be a government project, and at the moment they're providing no funding, and therefore we can't pursue. So colleagues, on that basis, are you happy to move forward that we don't do the animal BCP, we continue work on the others, and that we continue to lobby, get government to find the correct investment to make this work?
I think we need to say that it's with regret that we can't continue.
Absolutely. Yes, you're completely right, Lynn. It is really with regret, because we want to do our bit to support British farming. Okay, thank you very much indeed. I think the rules as laid down say that unless anybody opposes, that's what goes forward. So thank you very much. That's what's happened. John, you're more than welcome to stay to look at other things on our agenda, but we'll completely understand if you need to run off to do other things.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for including me in the conversation, and thank you very much for considering it. I fully understand your position. Yeah, I guess really is that the traffic that you would have had, historically you would have had, potentially as the only port would have increased dramatically. But even then, the return on that investment, I can see as a local authority is particularly challenging for you. But suffice to say, we'll continue our lines in terms of lobbying government, and to say that we have a potential option in Portsmouth should they choose to fund you.
Yeah.
So we will continue to work behind the scenes as well. So, but thanks for considering anyway.
Thanks, then. Thanks,
okay.
Mike.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, colleagues, are we okay to move on? If we go back to the agenda as set out in the papers, we now go to the extension of the food waste collection trial. Colette, hello and welcome. You want to introduce this?
I do. Thank you, Leader. So the purpose of this report is to update the Cabinet on the progress and propose further extensions to the separate food waste trials that we're currently running. The recommendations are that you note the progress and outcomes of the 2 existing food waste collection trials and agree to that these continue for a further 12 months from September 21. And then also that you approve an extension of a further 2 rounds for a 12-month period from September 21. At a cost of £300,000, and that this be funded from the Cabinet Reserve, but subject to final approval of the budgets at full council on the 9th of February, and also full council approval of the capital scheme on the 9th of February. So just a bit of background. As a unitary authority, the council has powers to stipulate the materials or items which may or may not be placed out for collection, and currently we collect rubbish weekly, recycling fortnightly, and this is all supported by a network of bring banks for glass, textiles and cartons. We have one of the lowest recycling rates in the country at just 25.5%. Although we do also have one of the lowest landfill use rates, which is important to note, at just 4.2% of waste. The administration was looking for opportunities to increase recycling for residents and recognised that with food making up 40% of the black bag waste, this was the area that had the most impact. The first trial was launched in September 19 with a further trial added in September 20, and those two rounds cover about 24,000 households. Both the trials have been really well received by residents, with participation ranging from 61% in trial 1 and 42% in trial 2. And we're diverting 19% of all black bag waste in trial 1 and 16% of black bag waste in trial 2. So that's really good tonnages. Once it's rolled out across the whole city, we would estimate that the amount of food waste that we can recycle would be around 5,000 tonnes a year, and that should reduce black bag waste by just over 10%. Carbon emissions should also reduce, and so we're recommending the extension of the food waste trials to a further 2 because participation levels have been good. Over 50% of the residents who responded to the survey reported changes in their shopping habits once they'd seen how much food waste they produced. The recycling rate will increase by up to 4% with 4 collection rounds that we'll have with this further extension. And over 90% of residents who responded to the survey said they were satisfied or very satisfied with the service. And this planned expansion will double the number of households receiving food waste collections. It's anticipated that trials for the further food waste 3 and 4 will commence in September and run for 12 months. There are no significant impacts identified in the integrated impact assessment, and in legal terms, the council can determine the types of waste that it collects. And then I'll just draw your attention to the finance comments, which highlight that the proposal is subject to approval of both the revenue budget and capital programme 21-22 on the 9th of February at full council. That's it.
Thank you very much, Colette. That's very kind. I think this is something that's gone really, really well. So this would mean that we're currently looking after a third of the city. With this, we've moved to 2/3 of the city. But Dave Ashmore, as portfolio holder for environment and climate and the climate emergency, do you want to come in, David?
I do indeed. I'll try and keep it brief, just in case my Wi-Fi cuts out again. But yeah, I think there's a lot of points that were raised in that little introduction there. You know, it's a measure of how much we've pushed on with, you know, trying to avoid waste, and how much we're trying to, you know, improve what we can recycle. You know, you brought out the point there, Colette, about, you know, carbon emissions will go lower, and you know how well received this trial was. And the very important thing there, it's not to be understated, is how many people have said they didn't realise how much they were throwing away. They didn't, you know, and it's changed their shopping habits. So you know, it goes back into our, you know, the mantra there of, you know, refuse, reuse before recycling. So people, you know, there's less wastage if people don't buy stuff that's basically just going to go straight in the bin anyway. So you know, it helps focus people. As I say, it's been well received by everyone. You know, unfortunately, we couldn't do it citywide by the end of this year due to, you know, COVID ravages on the budget, etc. But you know, with the extensions, I think this is the natural progression of it. We can give it to more. I think it's sort of cover almost 2/3 of the city, won't it? So yeah, it's going well. I'm really pleased that everyone's liked it. I'm really pleased that we are ahead of you know, other local authorities on some other local authorities on this issue, and yeah, absolutely well chuffed with it. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I think it's a really good scheme, and I'm really pleased to support this. If we are able to take 5,000 tonnes of food waste out of the waste stream going to the incinerator, and instead divert it to anaerobic digestion, that's a significant impact in terms of reducing CO2, but also a significant impact in reducing the amount of waste that goes for incineration. So I think this is a really good thing to be doing, and let's hope that in a year's time we're able to extend it across the whole of the city to every single household. Colleagues, anybody else?
Right.
What's all right, David?
I was just saying, it's all right. This is fantastic.
Good. Colleagues, okay, I haven't got anybody else who's indicated they want to speak. So, colleagues, are you happy with the recommendations in the report? Great. Thank you very much indeed. We now go on to the Portsmouth Lottery, which is, who's going to talk to us about lottery? Is that Claire?
Hello, Leader. It's Catherine Ramsey.
Oh, Catherine, hello, nice to see you.
Thank you.
Would you like to introduce the report and the suggestion of what we should do with the lottery?
Yes, thank you. So the purpose of this report is to actually transfer the Portsmouth Lottery to Hive Portsmouth to operate as a community lottery. So the recommendation today is the Cabinet approves the transfer of the Portsmouth Lottery to Hive Portsmouth as the community strategic partner. So a little bit of background about the lottery. Portsmouth Lottery was launched by Portsmouth City Council just over 4 years ago, with nearly 3,000 tickets in the weekly draw when it first came about. At the time, it was actually the largest launch that Gatherwell, the operating company, had actually seen. Since then, there's been 184 organisations that have benefited from the lottery, with the fundraise to date that's totalled over £230,000. 20 pence in each of these tickets is returned to Portsmouth City Council, and it's redistributed to the local voluntary groups via a grant application process. And since January 17, 75 organisations have received funding through these grants, totalling over £100,000. Since 2017, though, the weekly sales have actually steadily reduced. Ticket numbers and the number of players have now reduced to around 750 a year. So the reason that we're actually asking for this to get transferred over to the Hive, Hive Portsmouth, as you know, works with a broad range of voluntary and community groups across Portsmouth. It includes around 700 groups on their directory of services. Hive is well positioned to take on the role, as they already provide grant distribution on behalf of other agencies, including British Red Cross, Southern Cooperative and Portsmouth City Council. And actually they'll be able to put some refreshed focus and new impotence in terms of the marketing, social media, etc. The panel that decides upon the distribution of the funds will remain as now, and membership, which is from the business, education and the voluntary sector in Portsmouth, will remain, and the process of applying for the funds will also remain the same. Benefits of moving it to the Hive Portsmouth also includes an increase in marketing, and there's some saving in Portsmouth City Council marketing and officer time.
Okay, Catherine, thanks very much indeed. That's very good. I've got two colleagues who want to come in. Chris Atwell, followed by Matthew Winnington. Chris.
Thank you, and thank you, Catherine. Thank you for the report. I think for the reasons set out in your report, the move of Portsmouth Lottery to Hive Portsmouth makes complete sense. I assume Cabinet colleagues will approve the recommendations, and on that basis, I wish the lottery all the best in its new home.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, and I completely agree with Chris about this. But having been on the council when this was first brought in, I always thought it was slightly perverse that the council was running its own lottery, which is for the benefit of the voluntary community sector. And so this having a home now within the voluntary and community sector via the Hive seems to make absolute sense to me. And I really do hope that they will be able to reverse the decline of those who want to partake in the lottery, which is run by the voluntary community sector for the voluntary community sector, and won't have any of the potential baggage that I think did have an impact, which was the fact that the council was running it, and I think that was always a bit of an odd fit for a lottery for an area to have it run by effectively the local government. So yeah, I think this is completely the right move, and I'm really pleased that we're going forward with this.
Okay, I haven't got anybody else who's indicated they want to speak. So colleagues, are you happy with this to go forward? As suggested and transferred to the Hive?
Yes.
Good. Okay, great. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, item 6 is the council's budget. Mr. Ward. And I understand there is an amendment needed.
Yes, I wouldn't quite call it an amendment in the sense of amendments that you're used to, but yeah, this is
correction. Would that be? Would that might be a better way? Okay.
Much more accurate. Yeah, correction. This obviously is your budget and capital programme report that is for you to endorse and pass on to full council for their consideration. Nothing to add to the report, but as you said, Leader, I would like to point out at least one typographical error, which is in the recommendations in recommendation 3.4. The papers that you have make reference to the financial year 2020-2021. It should actually say 2021-2022. Though that correction has been made for the version that's gone on to full council, so full council have got the correct version. It's simply that the papers that you have state the incorrect year. Probably worth also saying that there are a few other typographical errors within the report. Some references to council tax surpluses, which should say council tax deficits, and a few other references where the year is incorrect, but they have all been corrected and are reflected in the papers to full council. Nothing else, Chair.
Thanks very much, Chris, and thank you for the report. Our job, as normal, is to send this on to full council, but I think it's worth noting, really for me, the headlines of this. I think other councils have found real problems coping with COVID. We've seen both Northamptonshire and Croydon Council go bust and effectively restricted to just doing the very minimum sort of services to their local residents. I think we're in a very different place because of the way in which councils manage its money. So this budget sees £3 million that was underspent from last year and was transferred into effectively our savings account, being put into the capital programme to build classrooms in schools and things of that variety. And that good financial management that meant that the council spent less last year than it was expecting is something we continue to work hard on to make sure that that happens each and every year. I'm really pleased that we're rolling out the food waste recycling to another third of the city, so the majority of people in the city will be getting this year. I'm stunned that of the work colleagues have done to be able to bring forward a fully funded programme to be able to replace pools in the south of the city. People across the council in all parties were very surprised to think that we could be able to do this, but good financial management means that is the recommendation within these papers. And I'm also really pleased that this budget sees an extra £2.8 million going into adult social care when we've seen through the pandemic the needs of the most vulnerable in this city, and providing that support is really, really important. So I'm very happy to endorse the budget and send it on to full council for decision, and to thank Chris and all his colleagues for the work. I think looking at some other councils in the local area, Chris always sets a target of what we have to do in terms of savings to be able to keep the council on a sound financial footing. We've had to make a saving of £1 million this year, and Chris's recommendation is that is the same for the next 3 years, so £1 million out each year. But in comparison with other councils, that's a very limited cut, and that very much goes down to the hard work and strategic vision of both the council officers and the cabinet, and I'm very grateful to everybody involved for doing that. Colleagues, anybody else who wants to come in on the budget? Hugh.
Just a question to Chris. Section 8.9 of your report, you look at the retained business rates and you say there is a significant degree of inherent risk. Are you content that you have the systems in place to deal with this risk?
Thank you, Councillor Mason. I think this is always a very difficult one because you're exactly right. There are a number of risks associated with business rates, not least revaluations, appeals. We now obviously have the risk associated with the legacy of COVID, and what that might mean going forward in terms of any economic impact that the nation will feel, actually, not just the city, and what that might do for business success or failure, and the impact obviously that could have on the council's retained business rate. So there's an additional risk factor this year. One of the proposals within the report itself sets aside a significant amount of funding to deal with the impact of COVID, and to deal with the impact of COVID over the next 3 years. So I think in overall, when you look at the budget proposal in overall terms, there's mitigation against the potential COVID impact built within the budget and the budget forecast for the next 3 years, as well as our normal prudent estimation of the likely levels of business rates. So we're estimating roughly that there will be an underlying 1% reduction in business rates income that we've factored in throughout, but we do also have that COVID fund, if you like, to mitigate against any further reductions in business rate income as a consequence of any economic impact going forward. In short, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Colleagues, I haven't got anybody else who's indicated to speak, so colleagues, are you happy for us to send this budget on to full council? Okay, I've not heard any opposition. Thank you very much indeed. Item 7 has fallen off this agenda, so it no longer exists. So we now move on to item 8, the new Theatre Royal. Claire.
Leader, thank you very much. The purpose of this report, as I'm sure members will understand, is to authorise officers to continue to negotiate with the theatre in terms of the purchase of the freehold of the property. As members will be aware, the new Theatre Royal is currently located in the heart of the city, in one of the most deprived wards in the city. It reopened in 2015 after investment from both the Arts Council and National Heritage Lottery, resulting in the long-held dream of the reinvigoration and disposition of the back lot being redeveloped. This was done in partnership with the University of Portsmouth, who also looked the opportunity to develop a range of services in a linked and shared building. The new theatre also at the same time in 2015 secured national portfolio organisation status from the Arts Council, which leveraged in an additional 250,000 for 3 years in 2015, and that was renewed again in 2018. Initial concerns were raised in around the summer of 2019, as we were concerned about things like the audience attendance numbers at the theatre. We supported this with allowing and providing an audience development plan review for the theatre. However, their position continued to worsen and deteriorate, and obviously has been made significantly disadvantaged at the moment because of the pandemic circumstances. You'll appreciate that all performance venues are in a very challenging position. They have mostly been unable to open or function in any form since March 2020, and that continues to be the case at the moment. So the primary income streams they've had for ticket sales, etc., have not been available to them. Both the Arts Council and ourselves have understood the significance of the theatre in terms of its geographical location, what it should and could be delivering, and have supported that through providing additional information reports and reviews of areas pertaining to the delivery of the theatre, such as audience development, such as governance, such as finance, in order to allow the Board of Trustees information to make some informed decisions. However, the situation continues to be fairly critical in a complex environment for the theatre. From our point of view, it is essential that the city is able to maintain credibility with the Arts Council in order to secure that national portfolio organisation funding into the city over a longer period of time. They are one of only 2 national portfolio organisations funded in the city, so that significance of the sum that's attributed to them from the Arts Council is significant. We need to also preserve a theatre as a venue capable of hosting high quality visiting productions. I know, and as Councillor Mason has already referenced in this call, you have other performance venues in the city. However, there is clear blue water between the distinctiveness of the venues and what they can and will be able to do going forward. We've got to maintain that venue if we can. We need to continue to explore that external funding, and we need to continue to support the venues policy that we adopted in 2010. for me, the most heartening fact is the fact that we know the difference that the performances and actions by that theatre can make into that immediate community. And I've spoken to several of the ward members about how that impacts in the Charles Dickens ward. For many people, the threshold of going into a theatre is particularly challenging, yet this theatre is positioned particularly well in order to support an outreach programme which engages and works directly with those local communities so they can access all sorts of things, not least of which is confidence and understanding their sense of self-belief. The report really is asking for the permission to continue the ongoing negotiations and to look to secure the freehold of the theatre. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Claire, and thank you for all your work on this as well. Steve Pitt, would you like to come in, as this is your portfolio area?
Thank you, Leader.
And you've also been working very hard on this.
Yes, I think it's fair to say this has taken up a very significant portion of my time since the early part of last year. As Claire indicated, we were already getting involved in conversations with the Theatre Trust over the difficulties they were experiencing at that point. And then I think it's fair to say that COVID kind of put the tin hat on it for them. As Claire said, you know, there are theatres all around the country that are experiencing huge amounts of difficulty. Colleagues will be aware that the Nuffield theatres in Southampton fell over during the pandemic and became insolvent. And that's been a big blow to our neighbouring city, and it's of the paramount importance that we make sure that this asset is maintained for the city. As you'll be aware, we own the freehold of the King's Theatre, which means whatever happens with the operator of that theatre, although incredibly successful of late, we are future-proofing by continuing to retain those freeholds should anything go wrong, and the same thing applies to the Guildhall as well. It's absolutely crucial that the assets themselves remain available for the use of the city moving forward and for the benefit of those communities, some of which, as Claire said, in particularly the case of the new Theatre Royal, are in very deprived communities where cultural assets are at a premium. Apologies for the whining, my dog's just arrived back from a walk. So it is absolutely vital that we take this step and secure the freehold. I'd like to thank colleagues at the Arts Council and at the university for the dialogue that we've been able to have so far, and that we plan to continue to have to make sure that we can meet any concerns that anybody has moving forward, and do so in the spirit of partnership. But for now and today, the primary concern has to be securing its future, and that's why this decision is before us. So I'd urge colleagues to support the recommendations. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve, and I completely agree with that. It's really important that we make sure that this theatre doesn't stop being a theatre and becoming a nightclub or a pub or anything like that. I know that when I had a role within Push, I managed to get £1.4 million towards the refurbishment and a rebuilding of the back lot at the new Theatre Royal. So I have a great deal of affection for it, and it's a really important part of the city's cultural landscape. So I think it's very sensible for us to get to purchase the freehold and work with the current trust to be able to look at relaunching this so it has a secure future. I haven't got anybody else who's indicated. In which case, colleagues, are you happy with the recommendations? Great. Okay, let's move on to item 10, Shareholder Committee. Mr. Balfe, are you here for that?
No, I wasn't going to be here for that. I was going to be here for the Theatre Royal, but if you want me to talk to you about shareholders, I was going to get Sophie to do it, but I don't think she's joined yet.
Okay, is Sophie here?
She's due to join. I'll just chase her up.
Should we move on to the next item and come back?
Well, the other item is okay. So the next item then is a forward plan emission. Just to say that the item 12 should have been on the 12 and 13 should have been on the agenda forward plan and weren't. But are colleagues happy to look at this? And then, in terms of exclusion of press and public, I'll just ask people not to refer to things in the confidential appendix, but that we'll have the discussion in open session. Tom, would you like to talk to us about Cosham?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, if I could give a short introduction to this, that would be excellent. So the report before you seeks authority for the Council to enter into 3 property transactions that will enable the Council to help shape the future opportunities in Cosham. These transactions are the sale of former PCMI site, acquisition of the Cosham Fire Station, and acquisition of the Cosham Police Station. Now, it's felt that land assembly through these transactions, together with the Council's existing property assets, will create the opportunity to master plan the western central corridor of the Cosham district in partnership with community service providers to create what we hope is high quality development and growth that supports the centre's vitality and viability. The report in front of you, section 3 in particular, sets out this context in a much greater way, giving further narrative as to the opportunity that we see there. It also details the work that's been undertaken to date, and I feel as part of that we should give recognition to the government's One Public Estate programme, which has helped facilitate all the work and the partnership joining that we've done thus far, and we hope will continue to support the work both financially and through other resource as we move into the next phase. So I'd be happy to take any questions that members have on the report.
Okay, Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of clarification, really. I think it's well implied within the recommendations, but just for completeness, recommendations 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4 are subject to the Council approval of recommendation 2.5. As I said, I think it's implied within the report, but I just thought I'd make that clear. Thank you.
Okay, that's useful for the minutes. Okay, I have Councillor Darren Sanders. Darren, come in. Where is Darren? He disappeared? He appears to have
it's
gone.
Worse than that. It's called the mute button, Gerald.
Okay, Darren, the floor is...
You're very kind. And also thanks to Tom and everyone else who's been involved in preparing this package. The redevelopment of Cosham has been talked about for years by politicians of all parties and administrations of all colours. And it's excellent that this administration has finally got a package that I think will help improve this area. We're often said that the council isn't interested in the north of the city. As a councillor for the north of the city, I know that's not true. And I know that since 2018, with the securing of Lakeside, and now with this package, as well as the investment in the budget into KG5 and to Moneyfields, if councillors approve the budget next week, that's a significant package of investment. This is the major shopping centre off Portsea Island. As I've said, many a person has tried to improve it, but now we have a chance to do something that is real, actually have a chance to make the area better and work with local people to try and have something that suits their needs. I'm delighted that not for the first time, it's this administration that's been dealing with the long-term issues that other politicians have said they would do and haven't, and I look forward to seeing this come to fruition. So thank you very much to the officers, and also thanks to Councillor Pitt as well for overseeing this development. I wish it every success.
Thank you. Matthew Whittington, and followed by Hugh Mason.
Thank you, Gerald. I went to a presentation some time ago about this, about Cosham, and this is when it was in the nascent stages. And this was after we've already started the work we're doing at Edinburgh House to have extra care facilities for people with dementia in the vicinity, which is a really real boost for that. And this is really building on that investment that we're looking to do in Cosham. And I look at it, it's certainly got the retail aspect, it's certainly got the housing aspect, but it's also got the well-being aspect here, that this is going to improve the centre of Cosham. This is going to improve that area of the city. It's right next to one of our most deprived communities in Wimmering, and also it's not far from Paulsgrove as well. So this is really making a difference to give a centre for some of the most disadvantaged people in the city, but also to put on the doorstep things that are going to really help with people's health and well-being, and the ability for people to have better lives and better facilities in their local area. So this is a really exciting way forwards. It's a good way forwards, working with our partners in the area, our public sector partners as well. And this is a really good group effort, I think, for the City Council, for the people of Cosham, and for all the partners we've got in the city.
Okay, Councillor Hugh Mason, you're next.
Thank you. I think we're looking at this. This is a very good scheme, a very interesting scheme, and it has one other ramification, which is it enables the fire service and the police service to modernise the way in which they can operate and deliver services in a new site, which will enable them to custom build for the 21st century. So I think this is a good thing, not just for Cosham High Street area, but for the whole of the north of the city.
Okay, colleagues. Thanks very much indeed, colleagues, for that. So I haven't heard anybody with a different view. Peter, Peter and Thomas, anything else you need to add in, or are you happy for us to go to a conclusion? Okay, colleagues, is there Peter? Sorry, you're waving.
Just waving approval, Gerald. Happy?
Okay, lovely. So, colleagues, is everybody happy with this going forward? Great. Okay, then let's go backwards then to item 10 on the agenda, the last item on the agenda. Peter, do we have a Sophie?
We do have a delightful Sophie.
Hello.
There you go.
Afternoon, everybody.
Okay, Sophie, do you want to just introduce this?
Yeah, so this is on the back of the recent approval of GAS of the Shareholder Committee Terms of Reference and the previous report that was taken to Cabinet on the 26th of March around the overall structure of PCC companies and the need for a shareholder committee. So the recommendation the report's looking for today is appointment of the members to that shareholder committee, and then for those appointed members to work with the city solicitor to finalise the terms of reference. The current form that was in the original report are draft terms of reference, and they need to be brought into date with the latest guidance, which was included in Appendix A of this report.
Okay, Matthew, would you like to come in?
Yeah, I'd like to thank the work that's gone into doing this. Again, I think this is a way of ensuring that we have the companies that the council runs being run in the best way possible, but also making sure that the council has a committee of councillors who really drives the point of view as the shareholder, as the single shareholder that these companies will have. So I think this is a really positive way. This will give a voice to every political party on the council in having discussions about as a shareholder for all of these companies, which I think is really important that we have that open and transparent way of doing things, and things aren't hidden and behind in sort of back rooms and information isn't shared. So I think this is a really important way of us taking forwards to really make sure that the council has some really good oversight over our companies that we run, to really make sure that that they are being that we as a shareholder look at make sure that we're having that conversation and giving that direction to make sure that our stake as a shareholder is really well taken and considered.
Okay, colleagues, I haven't got anybody else indicating to speak. Is everybody happy with this?
Yes,
Okay.
apologies, Leader. I was booted out by the VPN. I've just managed to rejoin.
That's all right. We didn't abolish you while you were away. So, colleagues, thanks very much indeed. That's the end of the meeting. Thank you very much indeed for attending, everybody. And I hope you have a pleasant day for the rest of today. Cheers.
I will turn.
Goodbye.
Sorry. Chair, I'll turn off the live streaming. Amen.
Thanks.